Open rate tracking, techniques to boost emails in 2025. Why open rate tracking looks different in 2025. If your outbound program still treats open rate like the scoreboard, 2025 probably forced a reset. Apple Mail Privacy Protection, or MPP, Gmail image caching, and aggressive security scanning have made a large portion of opens unreliable at the individual recipient level. The result is a metric that often looks healthier than the real human attention your emails are earning. But open rate tracking isn't dead. It's just been demoted from a primary KPI to a diagnostic signal. We still use opens to spot inbox placement issues early, compare subject lines, and sanity check list quality. What we don't do is let opens dictate SDR performance reviews, compensation, or "this sequence is working" conclusions. In this article, we'll break down how open tracking works now, what realistic B2B cold benchmarks look like, and the techniques that increase both deliverability and genuine engagement. We'll also show how we approach this at SalesHive as a B2B sales agency and SDR agency, building outbound engines that optimize for replies, meetings, and pipeline, not vanity metrics. Benchmarks: what good really means for B2B cold email. Benchmarking matters because it prevents two expensive mistakes: chasing unrealistic goals and overcorrecting a campaign that's actually healthy. In 2025, broad industry averages can look strong, around 42.35% opens across industries. Yet that number often includes warm, opt-in lists and inflated opens from privacy features. For B2B, many studies still cluster opens in a 20 to 40% range, but cold outreach should be judged with a colder lens. For most B2B cold sequences, a practical baseline is 15 to 28% opens, with top-performing, tightly targeted campaigns occasionally sustaining 30 to 40% plus. The key is that good depends on your audience, offer, deliverability posture, and how clean your list is, not on a universal number you saw in a marketing report. And while email remains high ROI in many analyses, often cited as $36 to $42 returned for every $1 spent, the ROI shows up in meetings and opportunities, not in your open rate chart. Use this as a directional yardstick. Then build your own internal benchmarks by segment: ICP, title, industry, and list source, and by motion: cold versus warm. How open tracking works and why it's messy now. Most email platforms still measure opens the same way. They insert a tiny invisible tracking pixel, and when images load, the pixel request is counted as an open. If images are blocked, you can miss a real read. If images are preloaded or scanned, you can record an open that never involved a human. That trade-off has always existed, but privacy and security layers have amplified it in the last few years. Apple Mail Privacy Protection is the biggest disruptor, because it can preload images shortly after delivery, masking IP and device details and breaking the link between open event and read event. By 2025, Apple-related clients are frequently reported as driving roughly 50 to 60% of all opens in many datasets, which means a meaningful share of your open rate graph may be automated noise rather than buyer intent. When teams don't account for this, they think subject lines are winning when the reality is simply MPP doing what it does. Gmail adds another layer by caching images, which can blur device reporting and sometimes generate additional opens from automated scans. On top of that, security tools, often sitting in front of corporate inboxes, can touch email content in ways that resemble opens. The practical takeaway is simple. Open tracking is directionally useful for cohorts and tests, but it's unreliable per recipient and dangerous as a trigger for automation. Reframing opens, a diagnostic metric, not an SDR scoreboard. One of the most common mistakes we see is judging SDR performance on open rate alone. In 2025, opens don't correlate cleanly with pipeline created, and reps can game opens with clickbait subject lines that spike curiosity but produce low-quality replies. If you want consistent revenue outcomes, coach and score SDRs on qualified replies, meetings held, and opportunities influenced. Then use open rate as a secondary indicator. Where opens still shine is early problem detection.
If a sequence suddenly drops from a stable baseline to a noticeably lower open rate, especially in non-Apple segments, that's often your first signal of a deliverability issue, a list quality problem, or a domain reputation hit. Opens can also help you compare subject lines and send windows, as long as you keep everything else constant and measure outcomes beyond the inbox. What we recommend is a two-layer dashboard: inbox health, deliverability indicators plus opens by client segment, and revenue motion, replies, meetings, and pipeline. This approach works whether you run outreach in-house or through sales outsourcing with an outsourced sales team, because it keeps your attention on the metrics that actually move pipeline while still giving you a fast warning system when inbox placement slips. In 2025, an open rate is a weather report, not a scoreboard. Use it to steer your outbound program, not to celebrate it. Deliverability first, the fastest way to earn more real opens. If your emails don't reach the inbox, subject lines don't matter. Full stop. Another common mistake is ignoring domain and sender reputation while chasing higher opens, usually by sending too much volume too fast, using questionable data sources, or stuffing first-touch emails with links and tracking. That combination can quietly tank inbox placement and flatten performance for months. Treat deliverability like infrastructure. Authenticate domains, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. Warm new sending domains gradually, and throttle volume so mailbox providers see consistent, human-like behavior. Keep early touches lightweight, especially in cold email agency-style outreach, where you're asking for attention from someone who didn't request it. Even if you offer multiple channels, like an outbound sales agency that pairs email with B2B cold calling services, email deliverability remains the front door for a large share of meetings. Also, align your message format with deliverability realities. Avoid heavy HTML, limit unnecessary links in step 1, and make your call to action clear and low friction. A short sequence with 3 to 5 follow-ups typically beats a single long, everything-in-one email blast, because it creates multiple chances to land in the inbox and earn a reply without spiking spam complaints. Subject lines that improve opens without creating spam problems. Open rate improvements that translate into meetings usually come from relevance, not cleverness. The mistake we see here is over-personalizing subject lines without relevance, dropping a name or company to spark curiosity, then failing to connect it to a real pain, trigger, or outcome in the body. That mismatch can increase unsubscribes and complaints, which eventually hurts deliverability more than it helps opens. Instead, keep the subject line truthful and aligned with the first 2 sentences of your email. Your from identity matters as much as your subject, so use a consistent sender name and avoid anything that feels like marketing automation when you're running SDR outreach. If you pair email with cold calling services or a cold calling agency motion, you'll often find that the best subject lines mirror what your best cold callers say in their first 10 seconds: direct, specific, and outcome-driven. When you test, avoid the messy A/B trap of changing everything at once. Test one variable at a time: subject line,
then send time, then from name. Keep the window tight and make sure you have enough volume to learn. Often 100 to 200 recipients per variant is a practical minimum for directional confidence. Most importantly, declare the winner using replies and meetings as the tiebreaker, not opens alone. Reporting that still works, segmenting, filtering, and measuring true engagement. Because Apple MPP and caching distort opens, your reporting has to become more segmented. At minimum, track opens by client family, Apple versus non-Apple, and watch trends in the non-Apple segment as your best proxy for human opens. If total opens look stable, but non-Apple opens crater, that's often a deliverability alarm being masked by automated Apple preloads. The next shift is to treat opens as a top-of-funnel health check while moving engagement downstream. Clicks, replies, positive reply rates, meetings booked, and opportunities created are harder to fake and less impacted by privacy preloading. This is where multi-channel matters. When you combine email with B2B cold calling, LinkedIn touches, and structured follow-up, you can validate whether a segment is truly responding, even when open data is noisy. At SalesHive, we operationalize this by optimizing both the message and the measurement stack. Our SDRs and copy strategists use our AI-powered eMod engine to personalize at scale, and we've seen open rates improve by more than 30% versus generic templates when list quality and deliverability are handled correctly. But we only treat that as progress if it also lifts replies and meetings, because that's what a sales development agency is ultimately responsible for delivering. What to do next? Build a 2025 playbook that survives more privacy changes. The future trend is clear. Privacy protections and automated scanning will continue to expand, and per-recipient open tracking will get less trustworthy over time. That doesn't mean outbound gets harder. It means the winning teams will be the ones that build strong fundamentals, clean data, disciplined deliverability, and messaging that earns a response. Open rates will remain useful, but only as an early indicator and a testing input. Make sure you're not using the same benchmarks for cold and warm email, because that misalignment causes bad decisions and unrealistic expectations. For cold outreach, aim for stable baselines, often 15 to 30% opens directionally. Then focus your optimization energy on reply quality, meeting conversion, and pipeline influence. If your organization is evaluating SDR agencies, an outbound sales agency, or sales outsourcing, ask to see reporting that cleanly separates diagnostic metrics, like opens, from outcome metrics, like meetings and opportunities. If you don't have the time, tooling, or headcount to build this internally, partnering with an outsourced sales team can compress the learning curve. Since 2016, we've booked over 100,000 meetings for more than 1,500 clients by combining email outreach with cold call services and rigorous testing that keeps deliverability intact. Whether you hire SDRs in-house or outsource sales, the goal is the same. Use open rate tracking to improve the system. Then measure success by the revenue outcomes the system produces.